Hey everyone, my name is Micah. I'm also known as the ADHD Stitcher, and um, usually I make videos that we call floss tubes. If you are not familiar with floss tube, it is a quirky little corner of YouTube full of people who love to cross stitch and talk about cross stitch and enable each other to get all the cross stitch patterns and start all the cross stitch projects. So normally I make floss tube videos, but this video is going to be a little different. On my regular floss tube videos, I have talked about making this video a few times, and since it is now ADHD Awareness Month, I thought what a better time than to kick off the month with my mental health journey. Sorry, one of my cats is jumping up behind me. Hi, what are you doing? This is Cleo, if you're new around here. She doesn't want to stay here with me. She wants to run away. But as you might guess by my name, I do have ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. And if you aren't familiar with me, I also have been diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and this one I haven't talked about publicly yet, but I've also recently added on PTSD. So it's a fun party up in here. But and I wanted to just kind of tell the story of how I got to where I am, because I have found it in many ways is a common story among women my age and nearish my age. I'm 38. And there are a lot of women around this age in their 30s being diagnosed with ADHD right now. And I think it's really helpful to hear from other people's background and history, how they came to finally get their diagnosis, if they were diagnosed later in life especially, because somebody who might not know what is going on with them and think there's no hope for help, maybe they'll hear something similar and they'll be able to find the help that they need. I'm sorry, I don't know what my cat's doing, but she's gonna make a racket, of course. It's her favorite thing to do once I start recording. She's been asleep for hours, but now it's time to wake up. So I was diagnosed about 5 years ago, somewhere there. I'm not sure exactly on the timing, but somewhere around 5 years ago, with ADHD. So that diagnosis is still relatively new. ADHD is a complex issue that I learn more and more about all the time. Lots of different little things that you don't realize are pretty widespread symptoms of ADHD. And one thing I would like to address is the aspect of neurodiversity and what that even means. I shared on my Instagram for the ADHD Stitcher that I would like to start a hashtag neurodivergent needle nerds. Because I have noticed within the floss tube community, both those who do floss tubes and those who just are around the community watching videos and interacting with other people, that there do seem to be a lot of us who are neurodivergent in different ways. But neurodiversity means that there is a brain difference, and things like ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and some other things similar to that, other brain differences, are considered neurodiversities or a neurodiversity. And this is a newer concept because, like, I don't have a problem saying I'm ADHD or I have ADHD, but it's my brain. My brain is what my brain is. You can't cure ADHD. Anything that is a neurodiversity is literally part of your brain makeup or the way it works. There are little literal differences in parts of your brain. So it's not a cure situation. It's a this is just how my brain functions situation. And often the case is that the way our brains function is not the way society is set up for optimal existence. Many places, workplaces, things like that, schools, are learning more and more about just how differently people's brains work and learning how to accommodate that, how to work with that, and work with those people in the way that's most successful and productive for them. That's why this concept of neurodiversity is important, because instead of asking a person to conform to a rule that they literally will fail at some point, is just not fair when their brain's not built for that. So, it's really good that more people and places are starting to understand this and allow people to work in the ways that they can be the most productive and happy. So yeah, I'm starting that hashtag. I'm starting a movement. All right, Fostobers, share that hashtag, and if you're comfortable, talk about your neurodiversity. The more I've talked about my own neurodiversity and mental health, the more and more people who've come to me and said, hey, how did you get help for this? Hey, what should I do for this? Who should I reach out to? Because they know that they're struggling and they know that something needs to be done, but they don't know what. But they've identified with something I've talked about. And they see that, hey, maybe this is something I should have seen about or I can get help with. No, I'm not saying tell everybody everything. There are things that I'm not going to disclose and talk about. Everybody has to have boundaries for their own safety. And that's perfectly fine. It's encouraged. There's some things that everybody doesn't need to know. It's just not for the world. But the way my mental health journey started, I've had ADHD my entire life. It's not the kind of thing that you just pick up. You may have symptoms show up more over time, but so technically it started from day one, but I'll talk about more from the angle of my addressing things. I'd always had a tendency to lean towards some depression. There were definitely low periods in my life when, had I seen someone about it, I would have been diagnosed with depression. After I had my daughter, who's 12, postpartum kicked in, so any depression that I had been able to just deal with blew up to a massive level. And eventually it got to the point that my husband said, hey, we're not doing okay. We need help. You're obviously having something go on, and we need to go talk to a doctor about it. And of course I knew I did, but it doesn't mean I wanted to do it. But I did. And I was diagnosed with depression and started medication for it, which helped a lot for a long time. Then somewhere in there, in between my two kids, I got pregnant. We found, we didn't know I was pregnant, and I started spotting, and I was like, this isn't normal, let me take a test. I was pregnant, and I was like, oh, okay, well, this isn't good. So I went in for an appointment to check on what was going on, and there was nothing on the ultrasound. What we think happened is that I had an ectopic pregnancy that just was already what they call self-aborting. So that, of course, was a whole, that's, having a miscarriage is always a hard thing. I'm fortunate, very fortunate in that that was my only one. So many people struggle greatly with fertility issues. But the process of it was that because it was ectopic, or suspected to be ectopic, I had to keep going in to the doctor's office and having blood drawn to check hormone levels, because sometimes with ectopic pregnancies, or even just a regular miscarriage, some piece of tissue could hold on and continue to grow, which can cause issues. And especially when it's ectopic and that tissue is in a fallopian tube, it can rupture that fallopian tube. Women can end up needing a hysterectomy. They could end up bleeding out internally. There's a whole lots of things that can happen. So for about 8 weeks, and I hate needles, so that was fun. About 8 weeks, I was going to the doctor once or twice a week to have blood drawn to see if the levels were dropping. They were not dropping the way they needed to. They dropped at first, showing the miscarriage, but then they would slowly start to get a little bit bigger every time, there was a piece of tissue growing. So eventually I had to, because it was going to be after hours, I had to be admitted to the ER and be given medicine to dissolve that tissue that was there. But that whole process of months of going through that was really hard on me. I'm very good at compartmentalizing, but that was an ongoing thing, so that was kind of hard to compartmentalize. So, we didn't reach out to a lot of people when that was going on, because I couldn't. I couldn't have people constantly wanting to talk to me about it, because I could not deal with processing while it was still happening. But so after that, of course, the hormones were wrecked, and then just the depression of losing the pregnancy. It got worse. It got way worse. Then, several months later, after that, I did get pregnant again with our son. And I had stayed on my antidepressant until we found out that I was pregnant, and then I stopped taking it, because for the health of the baby, it was not a safe medication to take. It would be okay. I'm sorry. I'm going to go. Pause, please. So, I stopped taking that medication, and it was not good for my mental health. I mean, it was much safer for the baby, not great for the mental health. So, I'm sorry, I just chased her out and she went right back in there. Hopefully it's not too loud. So, the whole rest of the pregnancy, the second and third trimesters, were really, really hard. I stayed in bed a lot. My husband would get up and get our daughter lunch or breakfast, and then when it was time for him to go into work, he would wake me up, he would put her in the bed with me, and I would put on the TV for her, and basically a lot of the day was spent laying in the bed, sleeping as much as I could. So that was rough. And I also was sick a lot during that pregnancy. I was so sick that when I left the hospital after I had him, I weighed less than I did when I got pregnant. So I felt miserable physically. I felt miserable mentally. It was just rough. And that's when we decided we were only having two because we didn't want to do a third pregnancy that could possibly be like that second one was. Well, technically a fourth pregnancy that could be like the third one was, but another one like my son's pregnancy. Then after that, I kind of threw myself into some other things. Made myself as busy as I could be. Because I was either sitting on the couch with my son, or trying to find something else to do, outside of the house a lot. He had bad reflux. He spit up about half of everything he ate, so he couldn't lay down flat. He got held a lot because he had to be kept upright for at least 30 minutes after eating. And infants, they eat constantly. So that was a whole thing. But then sometime after that, a little further down the road, I started having panic attacks, anxiety attacks, which I had never had before. There were always aspects of anxiety in there. I can see that now, but it wasn't like it turned into. These were like full-on anxiety attacks of just hysterically crying, not being able to breathe, hyperventilating. So my doctor prescribed some medicine for that, and I got a counselor, and that counselor helped me a whole lot. Things got better, and were pretty good for a while. Then, I guess, I don't know, a couple of years after that, somewhere in there, I was not doing good. We were homeschooling our daughter at the time, and I say we because it was we. For kindergarten, I did parts of it, and then towards the end of the year, every day when my husband came home from work, he would come home from work, we'd have supper, then he would do my daughter's school. So I was definitely struggling to get through that. I got to where I was having anxiety attacks every day when we were trying to do school. When she started first grade, it was an anxiety attack every day, and I figured out that it just was not going to work. So we were able to thankfully put her in a school that I was very familiar with, in the county that I grew up, where my dad was the superintendent, and he could go and check on her, and the teachers I knew from growing up with them, or my brothers growing up with them. So that was hard when she's always been with one of us, and we always knew what was going on with her. But I knew the people she was with, and they were sending me pictures of her, and I was comfortable with that. But something else was still going on. I was like, okay, the anxiety is being treated, the depression is being treated, I'm doing counseling, something else is happening. What is wrong? Eventually I finally found a psychologist, that I could go to. And the day we went to that visit, I thought he was going to say, hey, I'm calling this hospital down the road and you're going to go check in. I thought something major was going to have to happen with, that was going to require some inpatient care for them to figure out what was going on and what kind of medicine I needed. And like, I didn't know what was going on. And I had filled out my intake form, went in his office and sat down. Within 5 minutes, as he's looking at all the list of symptoms that I had checked, he said, wait, let me look. And he looks back and he's like, no, you had good grades in school. I was like, yeah. He said, so you didn't have trouble in school? No, I did really well in school. And he said, well, I ask because all of your symptoms are symptoms of ADHD. Have you ever been tested for ADHD? I think I literally said ADHD. No. Like, what? Where did that come from? So he said, well, let's do a test. And so we brought my husband in because the test that particular psychologist used, it's really good to have a second person to hear, because they asked that test. I'm not sure what it's called, but it's one where they say, do you do this? Do you sometimes do this? Have you ever done this? Do you feel this way? And some of the things are within yourself, but some of them are outside of yourself that you might not realize you're even doing. So it's really good to have another person there who is around you a lot to help reinforce, or if you say no, be like, well, what about this? They may think of something that you aren't thinking about. But so we did the test. At the end of it, he said, well, in order to be diagnosed, you need to have a 60, and you have a 90. So, yeah, I had it. Which at the time, I was diagnosed technically with ADD, but now they don't diagnose it that way anymore. Now everything is ADHD, and there are types. You have the hyperactive type, and you have the inattentive type, and then you have a combination. I really believe that I'm combined type. Technically, I guess since I was just diagnosed ADD, that would be considered inattentive, but where I retested now, it would be combined type. Leaning more into I definitely lean more into the inattentive side, but it is combined type. It's so wild that one little diagnosis can change your life. We left his office, and he was going to fax our family doctor, the diagnosis, the recommended medications, and all of that. And I would be going back to see him. Hey, stop. Sorry. Cat's getting into stuff she doesn't need to be. And on the way home, my husband asked me, he was like, so how do you feel about this? And I said, weird. It was nowhere on my radar, but I have an answer. So the more he talked about it, the more it made sense. And literally just having an answer and a reason that I have been the way I have been and felt the way I've felt was like, okay, I'm not imagining this. This is a thing. There are reasons I feel this. And then once I started medication, um, I improved so drastically, so quickly. It was amazing. It was like a switch was flipped on, and I could focus on things. I could think clear thoughts. I wasn't spinning in my head. Um, I could focus so much that I was hyper focusing, and um, but not just on things like, of course, obviously cross stitch is a hyper focus because I mean I have a floss tube, and I do a lot of stitching, but um, but it was like in the moment hyper focusing to the point that my husband would have to say, "Hey, quit organizing that dresser. Go eat some food. You haven't eaten all day," you know. Um, which of course that leveled out a good bit after as my body got used to the medication, but just the difference within the first week was amazing. Um, and I forgot to mention this part. Don't do that. Sorry, now the other cat's trying to lick glitter. Here's the other cat, Claudia. Where are you going? Before I got the ADHD diagnosis, there had been a time where, like some days I would just call my husband or text him and say, "Hey, it's not a good day." And he called me and he was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I was literally like balled up in the bathroom floor in our bedroom where the kids couldn't see or hear me. And I said, "I need you to come home. I can't do this anymore." And he said when he got home, I was rocking back and forth. I don't remember that. I do remember saying I can't do this anymore, which of course to him sounded like I wanted to, trigger warning, I want to talk about suicide. To him that sounded like I wanted to kill myself. And I mean, I definitely had the thought. It definitely seemed like that would be a way to end the things that I was dealing with. But at the same time, I couldn't. I just couldn't do that. Because I would imagine what my kid's life would be like knowing that I did that, and what they would feel in response to that, and the trauma that that would do to them. So I never had a real plan or anything like that, but the thoughts were definitely there. Um, so yeah, that also happened in between there. That also helped lead to me finding a psychologist. Um, which my husband, he got me in the bed resting, and he had called my um, counselor, and my counselor talked to me and said, told him, he said, "It's okay. I think she's going to be okay. You definitely need to get her seen, but I think she's just overwhelmed, and she can't put up the facade anymore. She can't pretend anymore, and she needs more help." And there have been times through the years that I get close to that place, but I haven't gotten quite back to that place. But I definitely can spiral into thoughts of stop, into thoughts of my family deserves better than this. My husband definitely deserves better than this. I'm a horrible mom. I'm a horrible wife. If I left the picture, then they could have somebody who's much better and worth their love come in. I definitely get to that place sometimes. Not often. And I did, there was a while that I did not see, I was not in therapy. But I have, in the past few months, started therapy back up again. So things are being worked through. That's when the PTSD thing came up, and I was interesting because there was a lot. It was a lot of things that I had previously processed and worked through, but other things going on have brought back up. And of course, the pandemic. Mental health has taken a giant hit in the last 2 years. The world is so different, and by the time we were all good and used to the way the world was going to be, it started to start back up again, and then it was like, oh wait, but no, it's not. And we're in a weird limbo place of COVID is everywhere, but you're still supposed to be living life like normal again. It's just it's a hard, like, when is this gonna happen? When is this not gonna happen? And the pandemic. I'm sorry, my cat's eating something it doesn't need to. Hold on. So as I was saying, the pandemic, the first initial lockdown at the beginning was at the very beginning was a little hard because the kids were like, but then it was also great because we didn't have to go anywhere, we didn't have to do anything. So there was no someone else's schedule to keep. There was no hurry up and get ready because we have to go to this thing, or we have to go here and I might see people or things that are going to be triggering, or but it was also hard on people like my husband and daughter, who are very much extroverts, who gain energy from being around other people. They couldn't be around other people. And my husband's job, part of what he does is just working directly with people to help them, and he couldn't do that. So it was really hard on other parts of my family. So it's been interesting. And then also, I had suspected over the last few years that my daughter probably did have ADHD, but it wasn't causing a problem. And I mean, nobody really wants to go put their kid on stimulants if they don't have to, or even non-stimulants, but as she got older, it got worse, and it started causing issues, which she is, I've said this before in a false tube, but in case I have people who haven't seen that, she is fully okay with me disclosing things. I'm not going to disclose anything she's not expressly given me permission to. And she at some point wants to do a video herself with me talking about her mental health journey. But she was diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and we had a bit of a fight to finally get her ADHD diagnosis, which was a very clear yes once we got it. And we're still working through finding the correct treatment. The whole figuring out medication and all that kind of stuff. Sorry. So that's hard, because when your brain works like this and you aren't able to have something to help it, you're stuck in this weird limbo. And for me, it's hard. It's really hard. I question, am I doing everything I can? Am I being a good parent? How can I help get her out of this right now? Because I know what that headspace feels like, and I don't want her there. I know what it feels like to be spinning out with ADHD and not have an answer. So the last couple of years have been rough, but I'm taking steps to help get things back on track, and hopefully we'll be able to get things on track with my daughter, and I think that that's going to help me a lot as well. And that's kind of where we are right now. With ADHD, people often just think about like the young boy running around with too much energy, which may very well be my son. But it's a lot of other things, and especially if you are not hyperactive type only, the inattentive looks very different. It's a lot in here, a lot that doesn't show on the outside. a lot of spinning in your head of, I can't do this. Why can't I do this? I should be able to do this. I'm a horrible person. I'm not good enough. I'm terrible. Why can't I do this thing? Um, a lot of like, I'm a really messy person. I always have piles of stuff everywhere. My husband is not, so that's been fun for him to learn to work around. um, I could sit on the couch and play a video game for 8 hours, but I can't make myself go clean something for 15 minutes. With ADHD, with what you're interested in, you can fully devote yourself to. But if it's not something that you enjoy or are interested in, you can't give it 5 minutes. Um, there's a lot of things like the impulsivity. You may, with me, it's not as big a deal, but some people may struggle with, um, just saying things that they're like, oh, why did I say that? I can't take that back. Or doing things, some impulse spending in major areas that can happen, which I'm not going to say that's never happened because, but it's, and silly things like the working memory issues, which I'd say silly things. It's not a silly thing. It's a legitimate thing. Executive function is an issue with ADHD. Executive functions are things like remembering to do X, Y, and Z, getting yourself to get up and go do this thing. I will want to go do this. I'll be like, I know I need to clean that. I know I want to clean that, but I literally can't move. Get up. I can't make myself get up. Okay, I'll just sit here and watch this and play this video game or cross stitch or whatever. Like with working memory, working memory is holding things in your head, like bits of information in your head, presently in your head, so that you can get it when you need it. Things like working through a math problem or remembering a phone number. Like, okay, here's the phone number, 555-5555. 2 seconds later, I go to start trying to put it in. 555. I don't remember what it was. People's names. Sorry. Bad with names. Sensory issues can be a big deal with ADHD. I can get sound. With a lot of sound, I can get overwhelmed pretty easily. Or even if it's not a lot. Like, my son is very soft-spoken. And if he is here talking to me and then the dishwasher is running and then the TV in there is on, I'm really going to have a hard time hearing him. And it's going to be like you can see a physical, like, pain on my face, almost like trying to hear, and I can't. It's hard. It's not that I can't hear anything, it's that I can hear everything. And instead of my brain being able to say, this is the thing we want to hear, push that out, it hears them all at the same level. And it's so noisy in my brain. And it's hard to pick up on that thing I want to pick up on. And so sometimes if that kind of thing is happening a lot, or if, like, say I'm trying to watch a show and I'm like, okay, just let me get through this show, and I've got on my headphones and I'm tell the kids, let me finish this 10 minutes and then I'll handle whatever. But they keep interrupting me. That's going to get me agitated. That kind of stuff. That's all ADHD related. A lot of negative self-talk. A lot of all those kinds of things. And of course, this right here, what I keep doing this, what was I going to say? That's ADHD. So it's something that affects all areas of my life, and anyone with ADHD is going to have a different experience than me. ADHD is a spectrum, much like autism. There are varying degrees of different things, and different things affect people in different ways. So, one of the sayings I hear a lot on a couple of the podcasts I listen to is that if you've met one person with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD, because we're all different. We're all affected in different ways. Some people are affected more outwardly than inwardly, and some people may be able to have some huge giant corporate job, and some people may not be able to do that because they can't control the impulsivity and they go off on their bosses and get fired. There are a lot of people, a lot of adults with ADHD who can't hold a job. People with ADHD need to have something to put their focus onto that they enjoy. They need a hobby. They need not everyone, but a lot of people with ADHD need creativity. If you don't have a creative outlet and you have ADHD, many times people turn to addiction if they don't have an outlet. And with people not being diagnosed, that is even worse, because of things like self-medication. The statistics, the last statistics I heard were that people with ADHD are 50% more likely to become addicts. If their ADHD is untreated, that goes up to 80%. So, there are a lot of people out there who are addicts because they are trying to self-medicate and they don't realize it. They just know that when I do this, that helps me function. So, I'm going to do it. There are lots of things like that, and some of those things are things that I'm going to talk about more throughout this month for ADHD Awareness Month. But I wanted to give you my mental health journey and give you a taste of some of the things that sometimes maybe you don't think about when it comes to ADHD. I didn't have like a specific list or guide or anything I was going on, so this may have been a little rambly. But hopefully it was helpful to, if you have ADHD, feel seen. If you don't have ADHD, maybe you've learned a little bit about it. You understand it a little bit better. Maybe it's given you some level of understanding of someone in your life that you've struggled with in the past. Or maybe you're even saying, hey, wait a minute. This sounds familiar. And like I said, that's happening a lot with people around my age, because girls couldn't have ADHD when we were growing up. And even still, people don't know what to look for in girls, because we generally present differently from boys. And that's part of why we're getting diagnosed now. People's kids are getting diagnosed and they're saying, wait a minute. Or they hear from someone like me who has already been diagnosed and realize they need to go seek some help. But if you do need some help, I'm here and I'm open to anything you need. I can point you to resources. I can give you great websites and podcasts and all those kinds of things that could really help you. They've helped me a lot in learning about myself. And if you have any questions about ADHD, please post them below. Or if you're not comfortable posting them below, you can email me. I'll include my email in the description box. But I would love to answer questions that people have this month. And so yeah, I guess that's all. Thank you very much for watching this. And just, go live your life. Take care of yourself. Take care of your mental health, because nothing else works without it. And I'll see you later. Bye.